Good evening, everyone. We continue our study in the book of First Kings, and today we are at verse 14. Right after Queen of Shiva went back, we find that this is a comment that really gives us a picture of how much gold that was given to King Solomon. Now, this is an incredibly large amount of gold. And then you see this noun is a picture of, and then after Queen of Shiva went back, the summary of the amount of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. Now, if you recall, this came from the king of Hiram. It also came from Queen Shiva. It came from the faraway, I guess, the faraway lands of Ophir. And there must have been others as well, because if we add them all up, it doesn't add up to 666, but there would be more. Obviously, some of the information is not for us to know, but the important ones are Hiram, Queen Shiva, and Ophir. Now, this is an extraordinary amount of gold that has been given as a tribute to King Solomon in 1 year. And besides that, from traders, the wares of the merchants, and all the kings of the, well, it says here the kings of the Arabs. It's not quite the king of the Arabs in this case. Um, this would be all the kings of Arab. Kings of Arab might be seen as the Bedouins, uh, the dependent kings, the kings who gave tribute. They gave tribute. So it doesn't necessarily mean Arabs, uh, because it comes from the word Arab. These are people who lived in the, well, I guess, the south of Canaan, the Bedouins, right? The Bedouins. And I guess in some cases, it'll be the east of Arabia. And these will also be the governors of the various lands. So we talk about country. We're not talking about a modern day country. These will be the uh, where they have independent governance. Now, from verse 16, we are talking about how Solomon used the gold. Verse 16 tells us that King Solomon made 200 large shields of beaten gold using 600, uh, this would be dinar, I guess, 600 dinar of gold on each large shield. Now, this would be a shield that is three sides for the body, right? For the body. So just had to understand that these would be the shield on the one body. And it's probably something like this. So if we were to talk about this, it would be the front and the two sides. And this would be made of gold. And he made 300 small shields of beaten gold using three minas of gold on one shield, on each shield. And the king put them in the house of timber in Lebanon. This would be the storage place. I guess you can call it the military warehouse. And it is to present defense mechanisms for the armies in the north. And so what we're seeing is Solomon is now using the gold for defense. Now, in verse 18, we now see how Solomon builds his throne. Verse 18 says this, and then the king made a large throne of ivory and overlaid it with fine gold. See, gold again is using all the gold that he obtains every year, 666 talents of it. There were 6 steps to the throne and a round top to the throne at its back, an armrest on each side of the seat, and 2 lions standing beside the arms of the throne. Then you find 12 lions were standing there on the 6 steps on one side and the other. Nothing like it was made for any other kingdom. So if you were to imagine this, you'd find that it would be 6 steps. With the 6 steps, we would have a throne on top. All right. And then there were lions. So if we were to paint the lions this way, there would be 12 lions on the steps. And then 2 on either side. That would be how we would understand the 2 lions standing by this armrest and 12 lions counting down. So now we have 1 to 12, right? 1 to 6, 7 to 12, A and B next to the throne. So this would be a picture of how grand this would have been. And so this would have been overlaid with gold. 6 steps and all lions standing there on each side. Verse 21, and all King Solomon's drinking utensils. And the idea of drinking utensils, these would be the, I guess, the cups and all. These would be for drinking, and it was made of gold. All the utensils of the house of the timber of Lebanon were of gold. None was silver. It was not considered in the days of Solomon. That means that it was not considered in the days of Solomon. It means that in the days of Solomon, he did not use silver. It was always gold for the utensils. Right? In the forest of Lebanon would be where he lived. For the king had ships of Tarshish at sea with Hiram's ships, which tells us that when he goes out for I guess to trek and to go to faraway lands, you would see that this would be possibly how that would go. This would be ships from Hiram and then ships from uh, Solomon. And so both of them will go, and this would be the Red Sea, and this would be the Mediterranean Sea. And from here, you find that the ships of Tarshish at sea, Tarshish would be somewhere to that part. You find this word in the book of Jonah, whether it's the British Isles or whether it's Crete, doesn't matter. It's really far away from the land of Israel, as well as from Tyre. So we have Tyre here, and then we have Israel here. And these are the two bodies of water that they are sharing the way of managing all the trade. Once every 3 years, the ships of Tarshish would come carrying gold, silver, ivory, monkeys, and peacocks. These would be all the things that they would have traded as part of the merchant ship and also part of the tribute. Verse 23. Now, we will spend some time just thinking of some of these statements here. In verse 23, we are told, so, as a result, and then we are told how everyone gave tribute to Solomon. How much gold, silver, precious stones, animals. And I think chapter 10 of First Kings is to paint a picture so vividly in our minds of the incredible wealth and governance of the kingdom of Israel over all the other nations in the world. And King Solomon became greater than all of the kings of the earth in wealth and wisdom. Now, whenever we talk about greater, it is about a magnitude, right? It's about a magnitude. And by magnitude, we're talking about in terms of power, in terms of wealth, uh, in terms of ability to do things. And it seems to be that Solomon is said to transcend, not just greater, but transcend. In a way, stronger, bigger, better, uh, more important than all the kings of the earth in terms of wealth and wisdom. Now, this whole idea gives us the fact that King Solomon isn't like the Pharaoh. He isn't like the Assyrians later on. He isn't like Nebuchadnezzar of the Babylon. He wasn't like or the kings in the other lands. And so when King Solomon rose his ranks amongst his peers in the rest of the world, they came to pay homage to King Solomon. And notice all of this is not about force, it is not about threats, it is not about oppression, but it is about sheer respect. Respect for Solomon's wisdom in how he manages the relationships between all the nations around him. He says, and all the earth was seeking the attention of Solomon. Why? In terms of attention, the translation for attention, it means that he was seeking his face. That's what it means. Everyone wants to talk to him and wants to meet him. And the reason being to hear his wisdom, which God had put in his heart. Now, we need to understand that this phrase here is not about God zapping his heart. And if you remember, heart would be mind, right? The will. And that's why it is translated as insight. There is an acumen that Solomon has. He has the insight and the intellect beyond all other kings because his wisdom far surpasses the way he speaks, the way he understands things. And just like what Queen Shiva had said, whatever people have talked about Solomon, and when Queen Shiva came to see Solomon, it wasn't even half of what the rumors and stories were. Because in person, Solomon is far greater than all the rumors. So it's quite interesting that we can see the difference between Solomon and all the other kings of the various generations. Because when people talk about rumors, you find that people tend to exaggerate. But in Solomon's case, they couldn't express the actual level of wisdom. They couldn't quantify. They couldn't describe half of what Solomon is able to do. These are the words of Queen Shiva as we had studied it yesterday. And so people came to hear his wisdom, which God had put in. So God gave him an ability. And this ability is a way of looking at things. And so you find that there are people who can't see things for the forest. There are people who seem to be very sharp. And you say a little bit, and they could come together with a lot of information. And that's what we would call wisdom. And Solomon has that kind of an intellect. All these people were bringing every one of them a gift of silver, gold, garment, weapons, balsam oil that was given by Queen Shiva, horses, mules, so much year by year as he reigned. And so you could see that this is depicted as the golden years of Israel. Everyone knows of Israel. Everyone knows of Solomon. Everyone has heard of the wisdom of Solomon. Everyone knows the God of Israel. Even Queen Shiva would praise the God of Solomon. That in itself, when Israel is obedient, when Israel listens to God, when Israel does what God says, this witness is beyond imagination. Verse 26. Now means and then. This is the description of how powerful Solomon would be. He gathered, and this would be assembled together, chariots and horsemen. He had 1,400 chariots. He had 12,000 horsemen. Now understand this in the way that is being described here. A chariot uh, would be something like this, a chariot. And it could be one or more horses. And these would be called chariots, and they would ferry soldiers. It could be one, two, even four soldiers, depending on the size of the vehicle. Horsemen, on the other hand, would be people have who would ride the horses. All right. And so when they ride the horses, they are called horsemen. And in the ancient days of warfare, you need both chariots to bring people, chariots to carry goods and food, horsemen to go and fight. And he has lots of chariots to bring his army to the war. He had 12,000 horsemen, stationed them in the chariot cities and with the king in Jerusalem. Now, chariot cities, how would we say, chariot cities were strategic locations where chariots are parked. And this is probably what we would see as a stratagem of war. The idea here is that you don't move all your equipment from Jerusalem, but in the event of anyone coming in to encroach into the territory of Israel, they would have all the equipment, both shield, chariots, and horsemen, enough to go and defend the nation. Verse 27 says here, and then the king made silver as stones in Jerusalem. Now, interestingly, is that silver can be considered a precious metal. But in this case, he was using it to make stones and put them onto the ground. And I guess you find that the pebble roads, and this would be the road for all the chariots to, as well as the horses to move on top, and this would demonstrate that the king is really rich, really rich. He made cedars as plentiful as sycamore trees in the lowlands. So he started to plant sycamore and cedars in the lowlands, right? In the lowlands. Verse 28. Solomon imported horses from Egypt and Q. Now, this isn't quite exactly how it should be translated. So let me just give you the idea. The the source of horses was from Egypt. It says here Egypt. Uh, Now this word here at, is not Q. I don't know why they had this word. But this would be his collection, right? His source was from Egypt and a collection, that his own collection, I suppose. And the king's merchants would acquire them, or buy them, and this is from a collection, or people's collections, for a price. So there are merchants who act as a middleman for the king. There are horses that is in collections by other people who would sell them. And then Solomon would put them and add it into his own set of horses. Then you find that a chariot was imported, and this word here is not imported. This word means ascended. Right? It's not imported. A chariot ascended from Egypt for 600 shekels of silver and a horse for 150. So if you have a chariot together with a horse, This would be 600 plus 150 shekels of silver. And then you'd find that Egypt is a producer or a supplier, and they would send it up to all the kings of the Hittites, the king of the Arameans. And so you find that Egypt became a source. This is a source producer. And they have perfected the art of domesticating horses as well as breeding horses and building chariots. And so, why were we told about this? Is because you can find that this is not cheap, which means that wars in those days are already very expensive when you've got chariots, horses, horsemen, shields, spears, all the implements of war is actually very expensive. And it was a good thing that Solomon had the ability to receive such incredible tribute of gold, 666 talents every year. And he committed himself to defending the country in a more political dimension, together with an army as well. So, what we are told in chapter 10 then is that Solomon became like one of the kings in the world, but he was a greater king than anyone else. I think that's what we can come away from chapter 10. And with this, we come to the end of our session today, and we will continue with chapter 11 tomorrow.